When I'm sick of drinks really, not enough high, that I would search for drugs to get satisfied with the high.
Alfred was introduced to drugs by a family friend when he was 17. He spent the next decade searching for the perfect high. Alfred isn't the only one who turned to drugs at a young age. From 2006 to 2012, the number of new drug abusers below 20 increased by more than threefold. For those between 20 to 29, the number more than doubled.
I believe every estate, you do have ex-drug addict or even drug user. If we don't look into the problem, it can also contaminate the youth.
Why are more young Singaporeans turning to drugs? Is this highly addictive drug the reason? Get Real investigates the rise in young drug abusers. Just a year ago, 28-year-old Alfred was spending almost every weekend getting high on drugs. He would never have imagined that a year later, this is where he would be. The former drug abuser is recovering at Breakthrough Missions, a drug rehabilitation center. A school dropout, Alfred started taking drugs at 17.
My mom and my father divorced. Then during that time, my stepfather was in prison, in and out of prison. He's a drug addict also. Then I started to take drugs. And because of certain things are unpleasant that happen at home, that I don't like to stay at home. And I used the drugs that, at the moment of time, I thought of it as trying to forget my childhood, because I don't have a pleasant childhood.
Alfred spent the next 10 years of his life abusing various substances. From prescription drugs like sleeping pills to party drugs like ecstasy, he was constantly looking for the next high. There were several instances Alfred wanted to quit. But he was afraid to seek professional help. He didn't know if he would be reported to Singapore's Central Narcotics Bureau, or CNB. Chia Shi Chung is the CEO of The Helping Hand, a Christian halfway house which rehabilitates ex-drug abusers. About 10 to 20% of its population is made up of people who voluntarily seek help for their drug addiction.
There isn't a criminal record if you voluntarily seek help from the local halfway houses, although we do screen your name through CNB to ensure that you're not a wanted person, but there is no criminal record.
In recent years, there has been concern over the rising number of young drug abusers. Between 2006 and 2012, new drug abusers below 20 rose from 46 to 162. That's more than threefold. As for the figures for new drug abusers between 20 and 29, it went up by more than double, from 226 to 557. These numbers only reflect those who've been arrested. So why the massive increase in drug abusers?
In my opinion, for the young people at the very beginning, they may start off abusing legal medicines, or maybe alcohol or cigarettes, and then they progress to harder and possibly illegal drugs. That may be one reason why some youths are under the radar because they may start abusing items that are not illegal in the beginning. Could be sleeping tablets, could be alcohol, could be just cigarettes, and they may transition to the illegal drugs.
Youth abusers whom we have spoken to shared with us that many of them were introduced to drugs by people whom they know. They can either be their friends or neighbors.
Freddy Wee is one of the few former drug users in Singapore to successfully break out of the addiction and incarceration cycle. He was busted for heroin consumption in the late 1970s, after being in and out of jail for about 3 years. Today, he's the Deputy Director of Breakthrough Missions, helping young drug abusers like Alfred. He believes that the lack of parental support is one of the reasons for the rise in numbers.
Today, the problem to me is that the Singapore society become more affluent. Family, perhaps, value are also different. If the family are just wanting to make money alone, neglect the children, and that will form a danger. The children become lonely. The children will also mix around with whether bad company or whatever company the parent may not know. By the time you know, it's too late.
Halfway houses and anti-narcotic officers tell Get Real that young drug abusers tend to be school dropouts or from broken families. But in recent years, they are seeing a different group of people falling prey to drugs.
Actually, we have seen a slight increase in people with drug addiction coming from actually very well-adjusted or wealthy families, possibly because of the change in our lifestyles. Perhaps it's much more stressful.
Curiosity, stress, peer pressure, lack of parental supervision. These are the common reasons why young people take drugs. But could this highly addictive drug be the main reason?
For one time, Singapore, they all no stock for ice. Then I will go Facebook. I was keep on see one friend. I message him say, you can get or not.
More young people in Singapore are taking drugs. In 2012, 68% of all new drug abusers arrested were 29 and below. 6 years ago, it was only 39%. Get Real investigates the reasons. Ken was 16 when he first started taking ketamine. A few years later, he was introduced to ice by a friend. Soon, he was addicted.
At first, I think I quite safe. But when you stress, you 3 days never sleep, because you 3 days never sleep, then you still need to work. You need this one to stay awake.
In recent years, ice, otherwise known as crystal meth, has become the drug of choice among young offenders. Between 2009 and 2012, there was a 70% increase in the number of new drug abusers consuming ice.
Now, ice is very popular already. Many of the young kids are like 16, 15, they all know ice. Then internet also got post those kind of they all videoing they all play the ice. Then they were just eager, hey, what is this one? So it's very popular already. Ecstasy, many people also take that. On that time, I think 0.3 to maybe 0.2010. That time many people take ecstasy, then the term super tight also very pop. But now when this time I go in second time I heard mostly young people all take ice.
Ice, unlike heroin and marijuana, is a synthetic or designer drug. It is believed to have made its way here in the 1990s and has slowly become more popular than traditional narcotics. Man-made synthetic drugs like ice can give a longer high and are much more addictive than natural drugs.
And it also gives a boost of confidence, but it's just a false sense of confidence. Many people who consume methamphetamine, they are able to stay awake for a longer period. Okay, and when they are awake for a longer period, there's a lot of things that they can do.
Because inside also got see some one or two those kind of diploma person or university one. They study for concentrate on the work, like their school work, their exam coming. They need this one to concentrate, don't sleep for a few days and to study. But they don't know the effect. If the longer you play, the deeper it is. You will never sleep.
Drug syndicates are profit driven, so they will do anything to maximize their profits, including adding in dangerous substances into the drugs which they are selling so that the effects of drug consumption will be amplified. There's no quality control when they are producing these drugs.
Ice consumption isn't just rising in Singapore, it's skyrocketing across Asia. Meth-related arrests in Southeast Asia have tripled over the last few years. According to a United Nations report, around 400 illegal drug labs were raided in East and Southeast Asia in 2011, compared to just 83 in 2006. Most of them were labs cooking ice. In Hong Kong, there have been reports on triads working with a Mexican drug cartel to help obtain the chemicals needed to make ice. With supply increasing in the region, anti-narcotics officers say some of it will end up in Singapore.
Singapore is not a drug-producing country, and all the drugs in our countries are from overseas. The drug situation in the region has worsened. CMB is aware that some of these syndicates are using Singapore as a transit point for the drugs. To tackle this issue, we have worked closely with our regional counterparts. We will not allow Singapore to gain the reputation of being a drug transit hub.
In 2012, there was a record amount of 51 kilograms of ice seized. It was a staggering 261% jump from 2011. That's enough ice for an estimated 6,000 drug addicts for about a month. 80% of what was seized was not meant for the local market. Still, the record production of ice flooding the region has led to falling prices in Singapore. In 2008, 5 grams of ice, which would be a week's supply, cost about $460. Today you can buy the same amount of ice for about $300. Ice becoming cheaper and more accessible over time could be a reason for the rise in young drug abusers. But is there any way to stem the increase? Get Real is investigating the increase in young drug abusers in Singapore. Between 2006 and 2012, the number of new drug abusers between 20 to 29 has more than doubled. Get Real understands the flooding of ice to the region and falling prices are some of the key reasons. The second most popular drug in the country now, ice is the drug of choice for most young abusers. While trying to stem the increase in young drug addicts, authorities are facing another challenge. Some 3,000 former drug abusers serving long-term prison sentences will be finishing their term. They will be released between 2012 and 2014.
The concerns will be this, that those who actually came out, if they're not recovering, if they don't manage themselves, if they relapse back to drugs, they can actually influence others to use drugs again here.
I believe every estate, you do have ex-drug addict or even drug user. If we don't look into the problem, it can also contaminate the youth. Just one of them relapse, then it can contaminate that area already.
The relapse rate is high in Singapore. In 2012, 2 in 3 arrested for drug offences were repeat offenders. But authorities have added more manpower and logistics to address the issue. Those with higher risks of relapse are under tighter supervision upon release. They also have stricter curfews and are monitored electronically.
CMB has also introduced some new laws last year, in which we introduced a harsher penalty for those who sell drugs to youth or make use of youth to distribute drugs. In addition, we have also increased the penalty for people who organize drug parties which involves youth.
Besides these tougher measures, Singapore has also put in place harsher punishment for repeat drug traffickers. As for those caught for drug consumption, monitoring them for drug abuse continues after they're released into society.
Once we commit them to a drug rehab center, and when they are released from the drug rehab center, they got to report to us regularly for urine reporting.
Drug addicts usually have to report to the nearest police station for regular urine tests. The Central Narcotics Bureau, or CNB, says stations can see about 100 to 500 ex-offenders a day for urine tests. While they're under tight supervision at the stations, some have raised concerns about ex-offenders, young and old, crossing paths.
Because you see, if 100 addicts go for urine test, you just imagine, doesn't mean these 100 of them are clean. It's basically the same police station. Although they have different timing, different hour you can go, but sometimes you happen to meet some old friend, this and that, that's where you get the information.
To minimize the chances of young ex-abusers being influenced by older ex-addicts, CNB started the Young Persons Reporting Centre in 2012. While the older ones report to the nearest police divisional headquarters for regular urine tests, those below 21 will head to this centre. The centre will also provide counselling. Even as officers ramp up enforcement, drug dealers are also coming up with creative ways to beat the system. Recently, overseas websites have sprung up, selling newer designer drugs, commonly known as K2 or Spice. These are classified as new psychoactive substances and marketed as innocent products like incense or bath salts. Psychoactive substances are chemical compounds made to mimic the highs created by drugs. A United Nations report said this new class of drugs has made its way to Singapore and the region.
My advice to the drug abusers who order drugs from the internet is that regardless of the medium of ordering of drugs, it will have to end up with the physical delivery of the drugs to the buyer. And this is when arrest can be made because drug possession is an offense.
Ken was arrested for ketamine consumption in 2007 and sent to the Drug Rehabilitation Centre. That didn't change him. A few years later, he found himself behind bars again, this time for consuming ice. Since his second release, he has stayed away from drugs.
Treasure your life, like when you want to do anything wrong, think of the most important you want, and now you have. Don't get inside already, then just regret. Because I also like that. At first outside, Jojo lor, also never mind what. Just sit only. I'm so young. But ended up that day I gonna catch by CMB. Wow, I also lost already. Think, oh, why I do like that? But it's too late already.
All things has passed. Behold, all things have become new.
Alfred started taking drugs at 17. He managed to escape detection for 10 years. But in 2012, he was admitted to a mental institution after reacting badly to ice. He voluntarily sought help at Breakthrough Missions, where he is still fighting the addiction.
Hopefully I can be able to change my old ways. There are a lot of things that I did was actually, I hurt a lot of people in many ways. That I myself, at a point that I find it difficult to even face myself. Because of the past, that the hurts that I bring to people, the wrongs that I did, the crimes, the sins that I did.
Alfred is expected to return home in 2015.